The forests of eastern Finland lie silent beneath a suffocating blanket of snow. No wind, no movement, just the muffled crunch of boots somewhere in the distance. Boots that don't belong. It's December 1939, and the world is watching Finland die. 6 days ago, 500,000 Soviet troops crossed the border. Tanks, artillery, bombers. Joseph Stalin expected this war to last 2 weeks, maybe less. After all, Finland's entire standing army barely numbered 300,000 men, most of them reservists pulled from farms and factories. The international press had already written the obituary. Finland, a footnote in the opening act of World War II, but deep in the Kollaa sector, 150 miles northeast of the capital, one man is about to rewrite that script. His name is Simo Häyhä. Simo is 34 years old, 5'3", weathered face, calloused hands, the kind of man you'd walk past in a market and never remember. He spent most of his life in the village of Rajärvi, hunting elk and tending crops. He doesn't talk much, never had to. In the Finnish countryside, you learn early that words are wasted when the work speaks for itself. But Simo has one skill that sets him apart from every other farmer in the region. He can shoot, not just competently, not just well. He can shoot with the kind of precision that makes other hunters shake their heads in disbelief. He's won local marksmanship competitions. He's spent thousands of hours in these forests, learning how light moves through the trees, how cold air bends a bullet's path, how to read wind in the stillness before dawn. He knows these woods the way a surgeon knows the human body, every contour, every vulnerability. And now, those woods are full of enemies. When the Soviet invasion began on November 30th, Simo didn't hesitate. He reported to his old unit, the 6th Company of Junior 34, a Finnish infantry regiment tasked with holding the Kollaa River line. He arrived with his personal hunting rifle, a Finnish-made Mosin Nagant M2830, iron sights only, no scope. His superiors noticed immediately. "Where's your standard issue rifle?" "This is my rifle. There's no scope." "Don't need one." It wasn't arrogance. Simo simply knew the truth. Scopes fog up in subzero temperatures. They glint in the sun. They add weight and complexity. And worst of all, they force you to raise your head higher above cover, making you an easier target. Iron sights were faster, simpler, invisible. Some of the younger soldiers mocked him. The old man with the hunting rifle. No scope, no chance. Simo didn't argue. He just walked into the frozen forest and disappeared. The Kollaa front was chaos. Soviet forces outnumbered the Finns 12-1. Waves of infantry, supported by tanks and heavy artillery, pushed forward through narrow forest corridors. Finnish defenses were thin, mostly small squads scattered across miles of wilderness, tasked with slowing an unstoppable machine. Simo's assignment was simple: disrupt Soviet advances, pick off officers. Sow confusion. He set up his first position on December 6th, buried in a snowdrift overlooking a supply route. Temperature, minus 40 degrees Celsius. Visibility, near zero through the trees. He waited. Soviet infantry appeared 2 hours later, 80 men moving in loose formation, confident, careless. They assumed the Finns had already retreated. They were wrong. Simo exhaled slowly, stilling his breath. His gloved finger rested feather light on the trigger. He aimed for the lead officer. 100 meters, slight crosswind. One shot. The officer collapsed. Before the body hit the ground, Simo had already shifted aim. Second shot. Third. Fourth. Panic erupted in the Soviet line. Soldiers scattered, diving into the snow, shouting orders that contradicted each other. They never saw where the shots came from. By the time they organized a response, Simo was gone, slipping through the forest like smoke, his white camouflage blending seamlessly into the landscape. Over the next 7 days, he repeated this pattern: appear, strike, vanish. By the end of the first week, Simo Häyhä had 22 confirmed kills, and the Soviets still didn't know his name. Reports began filtering back to Soviet command. Sniper, extremely effective. Location unknown. At first, they dismissed it. One sniper couldn't change the outcome of a war, but as casualties mounted, officers, radio men, machine gunners, all taken out with surgical precision, the tone shifted. Whoever this phantom was, he was crippling morale. Soviet commanders issued a bounty. They sent reconnaissance patrols to sweep the forests. They ordered artillery strikes on suspected sniper nests, obliterating entire hillside on the chance that the ghost might be hiding there. But Simo was always somewhere else. He moved constantly, never using the same position twice. He buried himself so deep in the snow that even thermal signatures were useless. He learned to pack snow in his mouth before shooting, masking the telltale vapor of his breath in the freezing air. And his rifle? Steel, no scope, just iron sights, instinct, and a patience that bordered on supernatural. By the end of December, Simo's kill count had climbed past 50, and the legend of the White Death was born. The new year brought no relief to the Soviet forces at Kollaa. If anything, the nightmare deepened. By early January, Simo Häyhä had become a whispered myth among Soviet infantry, a specter that killed without warning, without pattern, without mercy. Soldiers began refusing to advance through certain sectors. Officers stopped wearing rank insignia, terrified of becoming the next target. Entire units delayed movements until nightfall, hoping darkness would shield them. It didn't. Simo adapted. He learned to shoot in twilight, using the faint glow of snow to silhouette targets. He studied Soviet tactics, memorizing their patrol schedules, their supply routes, their moments of vulnerability. He became less a soldier and more a predator, patient, invisible, ruthless. His rifle became an extension of his will. One shot, one kill, no wasted ammunition, no hesitation. By mid-January, his confirmed kill count exceeded 100, and the Soviets were terrified. Moscow had seen enough. If Finland refused to collapse, and if one sniper could demoralize an entire front, then the solution was clear. Send the best. Soviet High Command deployed elite counter-sniper teams to the Kollaa sector. These were not conscripts. These were specialists, trained in Stalingrad and Moscow, equipped with the finest scoped rifles the Red Army could provide. Their mission was singular: find the White Death, kill him. They arrived in late January, confident and well prepared. Most of them never went home. The first serious attempt to kill Simo came on a bitterly cold morning in late January. A Soviet sniper team, 3 men, all experienced, had studied Simo's patterns. They identified a likely position overlooking a supply trail and set up a counter ambush, positioning themselves in elevated heights 200 meters apart, creating a crossfire zone. It was a textbook trap. Simo walked right into it. Or so they thought. What the Soviet snipers didn't know was that Simo had already identified their positions 2 days earlier. He'd watched them scout the area, noted their movements, calculated their likely setup, and now, as dawn broke, he was behind them. The first Soviet sniper died without knowing what happened. A single shot to the back of the head. The second sniper heard the crack of the rifle and spun, scanning desperately for the source. He saw nothing. Just snow, trees, silence. Then he saw the vapor, a faint wisp of breath, barely visible, rising from a snowdrift 80 meters away. He swung his rifle toward it, finger tightening on the trigger. Simo fired first. The third sniper abandoned his position and ran. Simo let him go. The men's terror would spread faster than any bullet. By the time finished patrols swept the area, Simo had already moved on. 2 more kills added to the tally. 2 more ghosts haunting the Kollaa front. But the war was taking its toll. Simo rarely slept more than 3 hours a night. He ate cold rations in frozen foxholes. His hands were numb, his face chapped raw from windburn. The weight of 150 plus kills sat heavy on his shoulders, even if he never spoke of it. Finnish officers noticed. They urged him to rotate back, to take leave, to rest. Simo refused. There's still work to do. And so he returned to the forest day after day, alone. February 1940 marked the height of Simo's deadly efficiency. The Soviets threw everything at Kollaa: massed infantry assaults, tank columns, relentless artillery barrages. The Finnish lines bent, cracked, but somehow held. And through it all, Simo Häyhä hunted. He averaged 5 kills per day, some days more. On February 17th alone, he killed 25 Soviet soldiers in a single engagement, systematically dismantling an entire platoon as they attempted to cross a frozen river. His tactics evolved. He began using decoys, dummy positions rigged with helmets and sticks to draw fire, revealing enemy sniper locations. He coordinated with Finnish machine gunners, creating kill zones where his precision complemented their suppressive fire. He stopped being just a sniper. He became a force multiplier. By the end of February, Simo's confirmed kill count had surpassed 400. The White Death was no longer a rumor. He was a tactical reality that Soviet commanders could not ignore and could not stop. Soviet frustration reached a breaking point. Artillery was retasked specifically to target suspected sniper hides. Entire grid squares were leveled with high explosive shells, turning forests into moonscapes. Counter-sniper teams were expanded, now a dozen men, sometimes more, dedicated solely to hunting one Finnish farmer. They tried smoke screens, night raids, coordinated flanking maneuvers. Nothing worked. Simo seemed to exist in multiple places at once. Reports came in simultaneously from sectors miles apart. Was it one man, two, a phantom? The answer was simpler and more terrifying. It was discipline. Simo never got greedy. He never took unnecessary risks. He shot, moved, and vanished. Every position was temporary. Every shot was calculated. He fought the war on his terms, in his woods, by his rules, and the Soviets couldn't adapt fast enough. By early March, the Winter War was collapsing. The Finnish lines, battered by months of relentless Soviet assaults, were finally breaking. Negotiations for a ceasefire were underway in Moscow. Everyone knew the end was near. But at Kollaa, the killing continued. On March 6th, Simo took up his position for what would be the last time. He'd been awake for 30 hours straight, holding a critical sector while Finnish infantry regrouped. His face was gaunt, his movements slower, but his aim was still perfect. Throughout the morning, he engaged Soviet infantry pushing toward the Finnish rear. 3 kills, 5, 8. And then, just past noon, everything changed. A Soviet soldier, desperate, terrified, fired an explosive round blindly into the snowbank where Simo was hidden. The bullet struck Simo's jaw. The left side of his face exploded. For a moment, there was no sound, no screaming, no chaos, just the dull ringing in Simo's ears and the taste of blood flooding his mouth. He was still conscious, barely. The explosive round had torn through the lower left side of his face, shattering his jaw, obliterating teeth, ripping open his cheek. The impact should have killed him instantly. Most men would have gone into shock and died within minutes from blood loss alone. But Simo Häyhä was not most men. Through the haze of pain, his survival instincts kicked in. He pressed his hand against the ruined side of his face, trying to stem the bleeding. His vision blurred, his legs buckled, and then, through sheer force of will, he began to crawl. Finnish soldiers found him 20 minutes later, half buried in blood-soaked snow, barely breathing. They didn't recognize him at first. His face was unrecognizable, a mangled ruin of torn flesh and exposed bone. But when they checked his rifle, still clutched in his hand, they knew. It's Häyhä. The word spread like wildfire through the Finnish lines. The White Death has fallen. Medics arrived within minutes, but the situation was grim. Simo had lost massive amounts of blood. His airway was compromised. His pulse was fading. They wrapped his face in bandages, loaded him onto a makeshift sled, and began the desperate race back to the field hospital. A brutal journey across frozen terrain under intermittent Soviet artillery fire. Simo drifted in and out of consciousness. At one point, his heart stopped. Medics revived him. Against every medical expectation, Simo Häyhä arrived at the field hospital still alive. Surgeons worked for hours, trying to stabilize him. The damage was catastrophic. jawbone shattered in multiple places, extensive soft tissue destruction, fragments of the bullet still embedded in his skull. There was no morphine left, no advanced surgical equipment, just exhausted Finnish doctors doing their best with what little they had. They saved his life, barely. Simo slipped into a coma shortly after the surgery. For 7 days, he lay motionless in a hospital bed, his fate uncertain. Finnish officers visited, standing silent vigil. Word spread throughout the army. The White Death is dying. But on March 13th, 1940, the same day the Winter War officially ended, Simo Häyhä opened his eyes. The Treaty of Moscow was signed on March 12, 1940. Finland had survived, but at a terrible price. The Soviets seized 11% of Finnish territory, including the entire Karelian Isthmus. 25,000 Finnish soldiers were dead. Tens of thousands more were wounded. But Finland had not surrendered. Against all odds, the tiny nation had held the line long enough to force Stalin to the negotiating table. The world had watched in astonishment as a force of farmers and reservists had humiliated the Red Army, inflicting losses estimated at over 200,000 Soviet casualties. And at the center of that impossible stand was a humble farmer from Rajjarvi. Simo Häyhä had fought for 97 days, 505 confirmed sniper kills, the highest recorded total in military history. No scope, just iron sights, patience, and an unbreakable will. Simo's recovery was slow and agonizing. His jaw had to be reconstructed over multiple surgeries. The left side of his face remained permanently disfigured, a twisted reminder of that final bullet. He would never look the same again, but he was alive. And more importantly, his spirit was unbroken. Over the following months, Simo learned to eat again, to speak again, though his voice was forever changed, quieter, more strained. He endured the pain without complaint. Finnish doctors marveled at his resilience. Most men would have given up. One surgeon noted in his records, Häyhä simply refused to die. As news of Simo's survival spread, Finland erupted in celebration. He was promoted to second lieutenant, a rare field promotion recognizing his extraordinary service. Finnish President Risto Ryti personally awarded him medals. Newspapers across the country hailed him as a national hero, the White Death who defied Stalin. But Simo himself said almost nothing. When journalists pressed him for interviews, he declined. When asked about his wartime actions, he offered only the briefest responses. I did what I was told to do. I was just a soldier. I did my duty. He refused to glorify the killing. He never boasted about his record. The Simo, the war was not a triumph. It was a tragedy that had cost Finland dearly. And all those Soviet soldiers he killed, they haunted him. Though he never spoke of it publicly, he simply wanted to go home. By late 1940, Simo had recovered enough to return to his village. He went back to farming, back to hunting, back to the quiet, solitary life he'd always known. The world tried to turn him into a legend. Foreign journalists sought him out, hoping for dramatic stories of battlefield glory. Military historians requested interviews. Even the Soviet Union, years later, acknowledged him as one of the deadliest snipers in history. Simo turned them all away. He built a small cabin in the woods, far from the main village. He spent his days tending crops, walking his dogs, and shooting, always shooting, at local competitions where he continued to win well into his 70s. He married, he hunted moose, he lived simply. To his neighbors, he was just Simo, the quiet man who kept to himself, who never made a fuss, who still refused to use a scope on his rifle. Most of them forgot he'd once been the most feared sniper in the world. But there was one detail that history almost missed entirely. Simo's refusal to use a scope wasn't just about fog or glint. It was tactical genius. By using iron sights, he kept his profile lower, making him nearly impossible to spot in the snow. He eliminated the risk of scope reflection giving away his position. And most importantly, he could shoot faster. No need to adjust magnification or compensate for parallax. His outdated rifle became the perfect weapon for his environment. Modern military snipers, Studying Simo's tactics decades later, recognized the brilliance. Sometimes simpler is better. Sometimes the old ways survive because they work. The Finnish military would eventually adopt some of his techniques: low profile shooting, breath control in extreme cold, decoy positioning. But Simo never sought credit. He never wrote a memoir, never gave a lecture, never asked for recognition. He just lived. Simo Häyhä lived to the age of 96. He died peacefully in 2002 in a veterans nursing home in Hamina, Finland, surrounded by fellow soldiers who revered him. Even in his final years, journalists tried to coax stories from him. They wanted drama, glory, heroism. Simo's response never changed. I did what was needed, nothing more. Let's be clear about what Simo Häyhä accomplished. 505 confirmed kills in 97 days. That's an average of over 5 kills per day, sustained across more than 3 months of continuous winter combat, in temperatures that routinely drop below minus 40 degrees Celsius. For context, the second highest sniper kill count in history belongs to Soviet sniper Fyodor Oklubkov, 429 kills, accumulated over the entire 4-year span of World War II. Simo did more. In less than 100 days, with a rifle that most modern soldiers would consider obsolete. And that 505 figure, that's confirmed kills only, verified by Finnish officers in the field. Simo himself estimated his actual total was closer to 800, when including unconfirmed kills and machine gun engagements. But he never pushed for those numbers to be recognized. He didn't care about records. He cared about survival, his and Finland's. Military analysts have spent decades trying to understand how Simo achieved what he did. The answer lies in a perfect convergence of factors. Natural talent. Simo had been shooting since childhood. By the time the Winter War started, he'd spent over 2 decades hunting in those exact forests. He knew every ridge, every ravine, every sight line. His marksmanship wasn't just skill, it was instinct. Tactical discipline. Simo never got overconfident. He never took unnecessary risks. Every shot was calculated. Every position was temporary. He treated each engagement like a chess match, 3 moves ahead, always thinking about escape routes and contingencies. Environmental mastery. Simo understood cold weather combat better than anyone. He knew how to move silently in snow, how to construct hides that were invisible even from 10 meters away, how to regulate his breathing to avoid vapor clouds. He became part of the landscape. Psychological warfare. Simo's legend became a weapon in itself. Soviet soldiers grew paranoid, afraid to move, afraid to give orders. Entire units delayed advances, waiting for artillery to clear sniper positions. Simo didn't just kill soldiers, he paralyzed entire battalions with fear. The right tool, that mock iron sight rifle, it was perfect for the job. Lightweight, reliable, no mechanical failures in extreme cold, no glare to give away his position. Simo had chosen his weapon wisely, and he trusted it completely. It's worth considering the other side of this story. Soviet soldiers at Kollaa weren't monsters. They were conscripts, many of them teenagers, sent into a frozen hell by commanders who'd expected an easy victory. And then they met the White Death. Imagine being a 19-year-old Soviet infantryman, ordered to advance through a forest where your comrades are dropping dead from invisible shots. You can't see the shooter. You can't hear the shooter. You just watch men collapse into the snow, one after another, and you know you might be next. That terror was real. Soviet survivors of the Kollaa front, those who lived to speak of it, described Simo as a ghost, a demon, a force of nature. Some refused to believe he was a single person. It was easier to imagine a team of snipers or some kind of finished super soldier program than to accept that one farmer could kill so many. But the truth was simpler and more terrifying. Simo Häyhä was just very, very good at his job. Did Simo struggle with what he'd done? He never said, not publicly, but those who knew him in later years noticed things. The long silences, the way he'd stare into the forest, lost in thought, the nightmares he never talked about. Finnish psychologists have speculated that Simo carried immense guilt, not for defending his country, but for the sheer scale of death he'd caused. 505 confirmed lives ended by his hand, hundreds more uncounted. Every single one a human being with families, dreams, futures. Simo never framed himself as a hero. He never celebrated his kills. When asked late in life if he regretted his actions, he gave a response that haunts military historians to this day. I did what I had to do, but I wish I had never had to do it. Today, Simo Häyhä is studied in military academies around the world. His tactics are dissected in sniper training programs. His story is taught in courses on asymmetric warfare and psychological operations. Modern Finnish snipers consider him the gold standard, a symbol of what one determined individual can accomplish under impossible odds. But more than that, Simo's story has become a symbol of Finnish resilience, a reminder that size doesn't determine outcome, that innovation beats brute force, and that sometimes the quietest people are the most dangerous. Finland's survival in the Winter War shocked the world, and at the heart of that survival was a 5'3" farmer with a hunting rifle and iron will. And what about that rifle? The one they mocked. The Finnish Mosin Nagin M2830, serial number unknown, personal property of Simo Häyhä. After the war, it was returned to him. He kept it for the rest of his life, mounted above his fireplace. No scope, no modifications, just a well-worn hunting rifle that had seen more combat than most soldiers. In 2002, when Simo passed away, the rifle was donated to a Finnish military museum, where it remains on display to this day. Visitors come from around the world to see it. They expect something extraordinary, a custom-built weapon, advanced optics, some secret technology. Instead, they find a simple rifle, scratched, worn, unremarkable. And that's the point. Simo Häyhä didn't need the best equipment. He didn't need advanced technology. He didn't need a scope. He just needed to be better than everyone else. And he was. The story of Simo Häyhä is not a story about killing. It's a story about survival, innovation, discipline under impossible pressure. It's about a man who was given an obsolete rifle, laughed at by his peers, and sent into a frozen hell, and who responded by becoming the most effective soldier in the history of warfare. It's about the power of humility. Simo never sought glory, never boasted, never demanded recognition. And it's a reminder that sometimes the greatest warriors are the ones who wish they'd never had to fight. Simo Häyhä returned to his farm, his forest, his quiet life. He hunted moose, not men. He lived 56 years beyond the Winter War, carrying the weight of 505 lives in silence. And when he finally died, peacefully, at the age of 96, the world lost the last connection to a legend that still seems too impossible to be true. But it was true. Every word. The farmer with the iron sights, the ghost in the snow, the white death. Simo Häyhä, 505 confirmed kills, 97 days, no scope,